Chiloquin lies in the Cascade Mountains of south-central Oregon. This is downtown Chiloquin, population 1,000. 55-year-old Edison Chiloquin can be called the town's first citizen. The folks here know him as Eddie. The city was named after his grandfather, Chief Chiloquin, the chief by the running water. His people, the Plaquenys, once lived in the high country on the banks of the nearby Sprague River, and they were one of 6 Indian nations later grouped together by the white man and called the Klamaths. But this land where the Plaqueny village once stood now belongs to the federal government. Eddie and about a dozen followers still live on 77 acres of the original Indian territory, but the land is not theirs. Through acts of Congress between 1959 and 1972, the government made payment on the land and gave each Klamath between $50,000 and $100,000 apiece, with the great majority of these people receiving $50,000. The Indians were largely uneducated, and much of their money was spent quickly and often foolishly. But Eddie Chiloquin never cashed his check. He's been holding out for land instead, but he doesn't want just any land. He wants this land in particular.
It was part of my grandfather's village, and it has on it some of the religious rocks and symbols that had to do with my ancestors' religion. It's sacred ground to me.
This 800-acre parcel of land which Eddie wants at one time played an important role in his ancestors' religion.
Because on it are medicine rock, which means the heart of the spirit, where my people would go to renew the strength of their spirit. And a great part of their religion.
This 77-acre plot where Eddie and his small group of followers live is part of a national forest. The teepees and other structures which dot this tiny parcel of land are only temporary. Every year, Eddie must renew his conditional land use permit with the Forest Service. There is always that chance that one year the Forest Service may not renew the permit. This is one reason why Eddie has not cashed his $100,000 check, and he doesn't intend to. Eddie's holding out for something more. He has a dream. The dream is to return to the ways of his ancestors.
Well, we'd like to bring back some of the teachings of the older people. Like when a young man reaches manhood, he would go out in quest of a vision of what he was to become, to face this life as an Indian, and to teach the arts, the cultures, and the different ways of my ancestors, so that I can leave something behind for them when I go.
Anthropologists study Indian petroglyphs, pictures and symbols scratched into rocks hundreds and perhaps thousands of years ago. Museums from coast to coast abound with Indian artifacts and tools. But Edison Chiloquin is concerned with preserving the living heritage of his culture in a rapidly changing world.
What we'd like to teach mostly are the younger people, because some of them have never known the ways of how their ancestors lived here, right out of the earth, and with all the plants and animals that lived here.
Eddie and his followers won't accept money of any kind from the government. They maintain an income from making and selling arts and crafts. Even the food stamps for which many of his people would qualify are ignored. They live off the land. Eddie and his followers believe that one day the government will turn back a portion of the land which was once his ancestors.
I have faith in it. I believe we can do it. We have a lot of people that are backing us, not with money, but by thinking that we are doing the right thing.
The conditional use permit is but a token gesture from the government. It's only temporary, and Eddie, the only remaining Klamath Indian who refused payment for his land, is growing old. For how long does Eddie want this land?
Well, for all of my life, and I'd like to leave it to someone else who would carry on in the same beliefs that I do, the same teachings, so that my ancestors, the Indian people, would not be forgotten.
It may take yet another act of Congress to ensure that Eddie's ancestors and his Indian culture are not forgotten. Currently, housing construction right across the river encroaches on Eddie's land and threatens this sacred village and their religious activities. 4 years ago, Oregon Congressman Al Ullman promised Eddie that if an administrative remedy were not forthcoming, he would sponsor legislation to give back the sacred land of Eddie's grandfather's village. An administrative remedy has not been forthcoming. But alas, to introduce such legislation could set a precedence, an act which could pave the way for the American Indian people who are in similar situations to Edison Chiloquin. From Chiloquin, Oregon, I'm Barry Hood, along with cameraman Mike Lenow, reporting.
As the eagle flies, this bend in the Sprague River lies 30 miles north of Klamath Falls.